Welcome to today's video. Have you ever walked into a room and forgotten why you went there? Or opened the fridge, stared inside, and couldn't remember what you were looking for? Have you recently had to squint to read small print or felt your eyes strain when it gets dark? If you're nodding your head, this video is for you. I'm the doctor in charge of this channel, and my goal is clear: to help you keep your memory sharp and your eyes healthy so that as your age increases, your quality of life doesn't decrease. Unfortunately, many people believe that memory and vision loss are an unavoidable given as they age. But science shows that this is not a mandatory rule. In many cases, the problem isn't age, it's that the brain and eyes are not supplied with enough nutrients to recover, especially while you sleep. The good news is you don't need expensive supplements or complicated therapies. You just need to supplement with the right few foods, simple, inexpensive, and which you may already have in your kitchen, unaware of their true value. Today, I'll share 4 such foods with you scientifically proven to support memory, increase concentration, improve vision, especially in low-light conditions, and help nerve and retinal cells recover better while you rest. If this is your first time watching the channel, don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on new content. All videos here are created for people who want to stay mentally alert, live independently, and take care of their health. Practically no frills, no empty promises. Starting today, you absolutely can make a difference. One meal, one choice, one step at a time. Simple but with a solid foundation. 1. Walnuts, reducing inflammation and restoring blood flow. We start with a familiar nut that is medically undervalued. The walnut. Many people only know its benefits for the heart. But in reality, the walnut is one of the richest plant sources of omega-3 fatty acids, specifically ALA, the precursor to DHA. This is not a minor detail. ALA directly intervenes in controlling inflammation in the body, especially in the eye's retina and the small blood vessels in the brain. Understand this point clearly. The retina is not just a thin membrane in the eye. It is the center for light processing, containing photoreceptor cells easily vulnerable to inflammation and lack of nourishment. When not supplied with enough nutrients like omega-3 and lutein, these cells lose their ability to function effectively. The result is you having to squint at night, blurred vision in dim light, or pain around the eye sockets after watching TV for too long. At the same time, the microcirculation system in the brain, when slowed down due to constricted blood vessels or oxygen deprivation, causes slow information processing, forgetfulness, or disorientation when changing posture suddenly. These are the first signs of neurological decline, which many mistake for normal aging. Medical data supports this. A 2020 study in the journal Nutrients confirmed that regular walnut consumption improves visual memory and cognition in older adults. Another study from the Journal of Nutrition, Health and Aging shows walnuts help reduce oxidative stress in the retina, a major cause of macular degeneration and central vision loss. What makes walnuts stand out is their ability to work while you sleep. The body uses the ALA and polyphenols in this nut to repair nerve fibers and strengthen the blood-retina barrier, the protective layer shielding the eye from harmful factors. Simultaneously, the vitamin E and melatonin components have strong antioxidant capabilities, slowing down cataract formation and reducing the phenomenon of seeing fog or halos when exposed to sunlight. Walnuts also provide lutein and zeaxanthin, 2 compounds that guard against blue light from electronic screens and UV rays. This is especially helpful for those who frequently work on computers, watch TV at night, or live in environments with artificial light. Regarding the nervous system, the walnut is one of the few foods that simultaneously provides omega-3 protein B vitamins and trace minerals essential for the optic nerve. These substances help increase the speed of nerve conduction, aiding in clearer text visibility, reducing strain when reading for long periods, and maintaining the necessary reflexes when moving outdoors. This is critically important for older adults, where a single second of slow processing can lead to falls or accidents. In terms of real-world experience, I treated a patient named Harold, 74, retired after many years as a machinist. He was very clear. "I won't give up driving, but I can't see the signs clearly at night anymore." After assessing his diet, I found he was deficient in anti-inflammatory nutrients. The solution wasn't complicated. I suggested he eat a handful of raw walnuts every evening, about an hour before bed. The results came faster than expected. After 3 weeks, Harold returned with a firm announcement: "I can read the signs clearly again, no squinting needed." We don't call that a miracle. It is a scientifically grounded biological response. Walnuts provide the nervous system and retina with the exact raw materials the body needs at the precise time to repair damage that has accumulated silently over many years. Furthermore, the arginine, magnesium, and potassium in walnuts aid in vasodilation, improving blood flow to the eye sockets and optic nerve. Those who frequently experience eye strain, deep pain in the eye socket when reading or working on a computer will notice a clear improvement if they consistently maintain a regular walnut intake. People who often have red eyes, a burning sensation due to lack of sleep or using the phone at night, can also see a difference. Natural anti-inflammatory compounds like omega-3 and polyphenols in walnuts help reduce eyelid swelling, soothe inflammation, and repair eye tissues. For those with diabetes or high blood lipid levels, a group at very high risk of retinal complications, walnuts help lower bad cholesterol and stabilize post-meal blood sugar, thereby significantly reducing the risk of fundal hemorrhage and microvascular necrosis. At the brain level, ALA in walnuts is the precursor for DHA synthesis, the core component of the nerve cell membrane. This good fat helps maintain the electrical conductivity and flexibility of cells, countering nerve hardening, a cause of memory decline. Magnesium, copper, and manganese in walnuts help increase the speed of nerve signal transmission. As a result, you'll be less distracted, remember information faster when reading or listening to others, and reduce brain lag, the mental sluggishness when processing information. Antioxidants like polyphenols, melatonin, and vitamin E help protect the hippocampus, the brain's memory center, from free radical damage. Research shows that eating walnuts 3 to 5 times per week helps reduce the risk of cognitive decline after age 65 by 30 to 38%, while slowing down the neurodegenerative process that causes Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Arginine and omega-3 also extend their impact to the cerebral circulation, helping blood reach the brain more adequately, alleviating feelings of heavy head dizziness and sluggishness. You will feel distinctly more alert in the morning and avoid the brain fog phenomenon. The healthy fats and protein components in walnuts provide stable energy for the brain, preventing glucose drops that cause dizziness, rapid heartbeat, or lightheadedness after meals. Finally, tryptophan and vitamin B6 in walnuts support the synthesis of serotonin, a vital substance for emotional stability. Older adults who are often irritable, mildly depressed, or feel lonely living alone will find their mood improves if they regularly incorporate this nut into their diet. All the aforementioned effects lead to one crucial outcome: faster brain response, better situation processing, especially necessary for seniors when crossing the street or driving a scooter, where every delayed second is a risk. If you are experiencing any issues related to blurred vision, slow brain function, or declining memory, before reaching for medication or aids, review what you are eating. And starting today, add a handful of walnuts to your evening routine. 2. Almonds, the antioxidant shield for memory and vision. Next, we'll talk about a nut that is equally potent, but often overlooked, especially when it comes to safeguarding your memory. This nut is the almond. It's small, seemingly modest, But don't let its appearance fool you. This is one of the most underrated tools for long-term vision reinforcement and sharp cognitive ability. This is a reality you must accept now. The mechanism is proven. Let's get straight to the point. Almonds are extremely rich in vitamin E, specifically a form called alpha-tocopherol. This substance is a powerful antioxidant acting as a shield protecting cells in the eye and brain from damage. Every day, your body faces many silent harmful factors, such as pollution, stress, unhealthy food, causing cells to wear out from within. The vitamin E in almonds helps reduce that wear, making your eyes and memory stronger in the long run. Almonds are one of the most powerful natural sources of vitamin E. It acts as a multi-layered defense system. Fights cell damage. It prevents eye cells from being damaged by external factors like blue light and UV rays. Slows degeneration. It slows the progression of macular degeneration, significantly reducing the risk of central vision loss in older adults, a finding confirmed by large-scale studies in investigative ophthalmology and visual science. Maintains moisture. Vitamin E, along with good fats, stabilizes the lipid layer on the eye surface, preventing tear evaporation. This reduces the gritty burning and dry eye sensation when you wake up or when staring at a screen for a long time. Reduces inflammation and irritation. Flavonoids and polyphenols in almonds are natural anti-inflammatory agents. They soothe irritated eye tissues, helping those who frequently experience eye discharge, slight eyelid swelling, or excessive tearing. Protects the lens. Vitamin E prevents oxidized molecules from clouding the lens. This slows the progression of blurred vision, reduces glare when looking at lights or the sun, and helps your eyes be less dazzled when moving from dark to bright areas. Improves circulation. The presence of magnesium, potassium, and plant-based calcium helps blood vessels nourishing the eye operate smoothly. This reduces the feeling of heavy, tired eyes, difficulty opening the eyes after long reading, and reduces deep tension in the forehead/eye socket area. Nourishes the nerves. Vitamin B2 riboflavin is an essential nutrient for the process of light signal transmission from the eye to the brain, helping the eyes process images more clearly. This is very important if you often see blurry text or feel like the eye can't keep up with the brain. Stabilizes blood fats. Good fatty acids help reduce LDL cholesterol, preventing fat deposits in the eye vessels. This reduces the risk of retinal hemorrhage and silent blindness related to prediabetes or high blood fats. The scope of impact extends far beyond the eyes. You need to know how it strengthens the brain. Stabilizes cell membranes. Vitamin E helps stabilize nerve cell membranes, allowing neurons to function accurately and maintain clear communication. Along with unsaturated fats and polyphenols, it increases the flexibility of cell membranes, keeping neurons from becoming rigid and the mind sluggish. Protects myelin. It preserves the integrity of myelin, the protective sheath surrounding nerve fibers. When myelin is healthy, your thoughts transmit efficiently. When it's broken down, signals slow, and memory, speech, and concentration also decline. Supports signal transmission. Magnesium, copper, and manganese maintain electrical impulse conduction. This helps you speak more fluently, avoid losing words, and reduce the state of knowing but unable to articulate. Increases focus and energy. Vitamin B2 and plant-based protein help the brain maintain stable energy. This prevents a hazy mind easily getting tired while reading or losing words mid-sentence. Protects the hippocampus. Vitamin E and flavonoids protect the memory storage center from free radical damage. This reduces the risk of short-term memory loss and increases the ability to retain information longer, a benefit linked to long-term vitamin E intake by the Journal of Nutrition. Reduces risk of cognitive aging. Studies show that eating almonds is associated with a slower rate of brain degeneration through its ability to resist neuroinflammation, improve cerebral blood circulation, and prevent the accumulation of amyloid plaques, a primary cause of Alzheimer's. Reduces brain fog. Arginine and natural magnesium help dilate cerebral blood vessels. You will no longer feel a heavy head, blurred thoughts, or dizziness. Your brain will be more alert without needing coffee. Stabilizes mood. Almonds contain tryptophan, a precursor to serotonin. This stabilizes the psyche, reduces neural stress, and helps you sleep deeply, because deep sleep is when the brain restores memory and consolidates information better. You must understand how it works in your body. Unlike concentrated supplements, almonds release nutrients slowly. It is particularly effective when consumed in the evening. This gives your body enough time to absorb them while you sleep, the time when both the brain and eyes shift into deep recovery mode. I have seen this effectiveness many times. Maria, one of my patients, struggled with forgetfulness and dry eyes. We incorporated just 10 almonds into her evening routine. After a few weeks, her eyes were less strained. Her memory and her words was less like a fog and more like a window pane. No complex changes, just real food working in harmony with your body's natural rhythm. If you are looking for a simple, safe, and potentially satisfying method to protect your vision and keep your mind clear, turn to almonds. This is a smart choice you should incorporate into your routine immediately. 3. Pistachios. The light filtering armor and brain signal amplifier. Let's shift our attention to a nut that is often underestimated, but makes a powerful impact on the retina nerves and sleep regulation system. If you had to choose one nut capable of simultaneously supporting the eye's brain and sleep, it would be the pistachio. Don't underestimate the tiny appearance of this nut, as pistachios are among the very few nuts containing high enough levels of lutein and zeaxanthin to produce a real biological effect. These two carotenoids are not merely supplements, but essential raw materials for maintaining the macula, the area responsible for detailed vision, such as reading, driving, or recognizing faces. A deficiency in these two substances causes the brain to receive flawed images, leading to a blurry sensation, light glare, and eye fatigue after just a few lines of reading. More importantly, lutein and zeaxanthin act as built-in blue light filtering glasses in the eye, helping reduce the energy surge from screen light, TV, or LED lights. Thanks to this mechanism, the retina is less prone to inflammation and degeneration, slowing the progression toward macular degeneration, the leading cause of vision loss in people over 60. A clinical study published in the journal Nutrients in 2021 demonstrated that individuals who regularly consume lutein and zeaxanthin have better vision in low-light conditions, improved contrast sensitivity, and reduced glare when driving at night. Pistachios don't just stop at protecting the eyes, they also positively impact the brain due to the presence of vitamin B6 and copper, two elements directly involved in the production of serotonin and dopamine neurotransmitters that help the brain stay alert, focused, react quickly, and form new memories. Copper is also an essential component for maintaining the myelin sheath, ensuring uninterrupted nerve signal transmission. This helps the brain receive information faster and the eyes process images more accurately. Notably, pistachios also provide natural melatonin, an advantage not many nuts possess. Melatonin is not only related to sleep, but also the phase where the body activates the self-repair process for the retina and nervous system. A small study in nutrition research confirmed that pistachios have the highest melatonin content among common nuts, surpassing both walnuts and almonds. Eating a small handful of pistachios before bed helps activate the retinal repair mechanism, soothe the nervous system, and assist the brain in memory consolidation. The extended biological benefits for the eyes include protecting the macula through the direct accumulation of lutein and zeaxanthin, which helps block blue light and UV rays, reducing retinal inflammation. Unsaturated fats and vitamin E in pistachios also stabilize the lipid layer on the corneal surface, reducing tear evaporation, thereby alleviating dry eyes, especially helpful for those who sleep with air conditioning or are taking blood pressure or diabetes medication that causes chronic dry eyes. Anti-inflammatory polyphenols help reduce red eyes irritation, itching, and burning eyes after exposure to bright sun or fine dust. Carotenoids and vitamin E also reduce oxidative stress on the lens, slowing down the phenomenon of lights having halos and gradual blurring of vision with age, contributing to slowing the progression of cataracts. Furthermore, potassium, magnesium, and arginine help slightly dilate the eye capillaries, increasing blood circulation to the eyes, reducing the feeling of heavy eye sockets and discomfort after long reading or screen time. Vitamin B6, copper, and protein support. Faster signal transmission by visual cells, improving vision in the dark and reducing the phenomenon of blurry in the dark yellow lights are dazzling. Regarding clear neurological impact, pistachios nourish nerve cells thanks to vitamin B6 and thiamine, essential ingredients for the brain to produce neurotransmitters, thereby maintaining thought speed and speech reflexes. Thiamine also helps stabilize the neural potential, reducing the state of forgetting mid-sentence or hearing others, but not absorbing the information. Polyphenols and lutein reduce neuroinflammation, protecting the hippocampus, the center for new memory creation, helping reduce forgetting recent events. Carotenoids also inhibit amyloid accumulation, a factor related to Alzheimer's and dementia, reducing the risk of Alzheimer's disease. Magnesium, arginine, and potassium dilate cerebral blood vessels, increasing cerebral blood circulation, reducing the feeling of brain fog and lightheadedness when standing up, especially in older adults. Vitamin B6 supports the production of serotonin and GABA, helping stabilize mood, making the brain less agitated, easier to concentrate, and reducing anxiety, thereby indirectly improving memory. Finally, the combination of healthy fats and plant-based protein helps maintain stable energy for the brain, preventing the brain block, don't want to talk anymore sensation due to sudden energy drops, as seen with sugar consumption. Take the story of Mr. Roger 70, who complained, "I'm not blind, but my eyes feel gritty inside. I lose focus after 10 minutes of reading." Osa, who showed marked improvement just by being asked to eat a handful of pistachios 90 minutes before bedtime. After 2 weeks, he reported, "My eyes aren't burning anymore, and I can read a whole chapter again without dozing off midway." Sometimes the clearest change in the nervous and visual system comes from consuming the right food at the right time, not from a prescription. 4. Brazil nuts. The power of selenium in a single nut. The Brazil nut is not a nut to be consumed out of habit as a snack. It's like a precise biological tool designed to deliver selenium, a rare but biologically massive trace element, to the nervous and visual systems in a direct, sufficient, and non-wasteful manner. Just a single Brazil nut contains over 100% of the selenium the body needs in a day. Selenium is not a supplement. It's the raw material for the body to activate the enzyme, glutathione peroxidase, an antioxidant enzyme, whose mission is to protect nerve and retinal tissues from the state of biological rust caused by oxidative stress accumulating with age. Highly active tissues like the macula of the retina and the hippocampus region of the brain are the most vulnerable. When selenium is deficient, the nerve cells there lose their protective layer, leading to chronic inflammatory responses. The viewed image begins to blur slightly. The eyes easily hurt deeply when looking at screens, and the brain experiences a dull sensation, slow thinking, forgetting mid-sentence, and losing the train of thought while reading. The body does not store excess selenium for long. It needs to be supplied in small and consistent doses. The Brazil nut provides exactly that type of delivery, small but biologically accurate dose, without causing excess if the user controls the quantity correctly. A study in Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience showed that older adults with stable blood selenium levels performed significantly better on cognitive speed and word recall tests, while the low selenium group showed interrupted thought patterns. Data from Nutrients 2022 indicates that selenium, when combined with vitamin E as in Brazil nuts, creates a clear retinal protective effect, helping to slow the progression of macular degeneration, especially in those frequently exposed to bright light or LED screens. In the eye, selenium acts as an endogenous antioxidant shield, protecting not only the macular area, but also reducing protein precipitation in the lens, the cause of halos around lights at night, and the gradual clouding of vision with age. When accompanied by vitamin E and the natural unsaturated fats of the Brazil nut, selenium also supports the tear glands in creating a lipid layer that protects the cornea, limiting dry, burning eyes and the need to blink constantly when using the phone or sleeping with air conditioning. In people who often have slightly swollen eyelids or red eyes in the afternoon, selenium, along with polyphenols in Brazil nuts, can reduce inflammation of the tissue around the eyes, alleviate discomfort in the eyelid area, and reduce the phenomenon of excessive tearing when exposed to the wind. The deepest impact is on the optic nerve. When selenium combines with the B vitamins and plant protein of the Brazil nut, it nourishes the optic nerve fibers, helping image signals transmit to the brain quickly and with less delay. This reduces the situation where older adults see moving images, but the brain reacts a beat slower. The feeling of the eyes see but the brain hasn't caught up. When blood circulation to the eyes is improved thanks to the magnesium and arginine content in Brazil nuts, the feeling of deep pain in the eye socket, like pressure pressing behind the eyeball, is significantly reduced. In the brain, selenium not only plays an antioxidant role, but also protects the synapse structure where nerve cells communicate with each other. When glutathione peroxidase functions stably, synapses are less damaged by free radicals, and the signal transmission speed is maintained at a steady level, reducing the state of the brain being frozen, reacting a beat slowly during conversation or information reception. Selenium also protects the hippocampus from chronic neuroinflammation, the reason older adults forget immediately after saying something or don't remember where they put things down. Brain tissue tracking studies show that people with low selenium levels have up to 3 times higher risk of Alzheimer's due to faster amyloid plaque accumulation. When selenium is consistently present, amyloid accumulation slows down, neuroinflammation decreases, and the nervous system is less prone to silent degeneration. Magnesium and arginine in Brazil nuts continue to pave the way for cerebral blood circulation, reducing the feeling of heavy head-brain fog and slight dizziness upon standing up, especially in the morning. When the brain receives enough oxygen and neurotransmitters, the speed of information processing is clearer without needing caffeine. Selenium participates in the serotonin-dopamine axis, balancing mood and reducing neural inflammation from prolonged stress. When the psychological state is stable, the brain finds it easier to remember, is less distracted, and the process of neural recovery is more effective during sleep. Tom, 75, once said his brain felt tired even when not doing anything strenuous. He didn't have Alzheimer's, but his reflexes were slow. He lost his train of thought mid-sentence, and his once-loved crossword puzzles became difficult because his mind felt covered in a layer of fog. No additional medication, no complex vitamin supplements, just the addition of one Brazil nut to his evening routine. After a month, he reported that he reacted faster in conversation. His eyes were no longer heavy at night, and he returned to solving crosswords as a regular habit. This is not magic. This is the effect when the nervous system receives the correct micronutrient according to the correct biological mechanism, small but precise. This is not magic. This is the effect when the nervous system receives the correct micronutrient according to the correct biological mechanism, small but precise. With the Brazil nut, the only principle to remember is dose control. 2 to 3 nuts consumed continuously every day can lead to selenium excess, causing nausea or neural fatigue. 1 nut per day or a few nuts per week is enough to activate the protective enzyme without causing accumulation. If your spirit starts to feel heavy without reason, if your eyes tire after long viewing, if your short-term memory starts slipping faster than before, then that is not just a sign of age. It is a sign of unstable neural antioxidant enzymes. The solution is not to increase the quantity of nutrition, but to provide the right activating agent, and with the Brazil nut, less is truly enough. In this final part, I will leave you with a direct message. It is never too late to reclaim control over your health, and it can literally start with a handful. Embrace this core thought. Perhaps you have heard or even accepted that when memory starts to fail, or vision blurs, recovery is no longer possible. You believe this is simply an inevitable part of the aging process, that your only choice is to endure it. However, as a specialist, I assert that is an incomplete assessment. The truth is, your body, even at ages 60, 70, 80, and beyond, still retains the capacity for self-repair. It's still taking notes. It constantly responds to what you put in, how much you prioritize it, and the purposeful support you provide daily. And when you provide the necessary tools, I'm not talking about pharmaceuticals or mystical cures, but simple effective foods, you are creating the condition to sustain sharpness. Stay connected, continue reading your favorite books, instantly recognize beloved faces, and preserve the most crucial memories. This does not demand a grand transformation. It only requires a small, persistent adjustment. 1 precise handful of nuts right before bedtime. That is all. Will you wake up tomorrow with perfect vision and a razor-sharp mind? Highly unlikely. But commit to it for a week. Persist for a month. It is very likely that you will notice clearer sight, quicker thoughts, and your self-confidence fortified with every passing night. And to those who have watched until this moment, I offer a direct thank you. Thank you for your time commitment, your trust, and your undivided attention. The value of that is immeasurable. If this video has provided any value to you, show your support by liking, sharing, or leaving your thoughts. And if you are looking for more focused content specifically designed for older adults concerned about their health independence and quality of life, don't hesitate to subscribe to the channel now. We appreciate your presence. You deserve a clear mind. You deserve good vision. You deserve to reclaim your sense of self-mastery. And the first step on that journey can happen tonight with just 1 handful. Subscribe to the channel today to maintain your independence.